Hello everyone, this is the 8th history tutorial video for class 8. We were doing the chapter from trade to territory. We will finish this chapter today. We were doing the administration set up by the East India Company. Now we will look at the army of the East India Company. Colonial rule in India brought in some new ideas of administration and reform, but its power rested on its military strength. The Mughal army was mainly composed of cavalry, that is, soldiers on horseback, and infantry, that is, foot soldiers. They were given training in archery, that is, bow and arrow, and the use of swords. The cavalry dominated the army, and the Mughal state did not feel the need to have a large, professionally trained infantry. The rural areas had a large number of armed farmers, and the local zamindars often supplied the Mughals with foot soldiers. A change occurred in the 18th century when Mughal successor states like Awadh and Benares started recruiting peasants into their armies and training them as professional soldiers. So, after the decline of the Mughal Empire, the successor states like Awadh, Benares, etc., they raised their own army and they recruited farmers from the countryside and then trained them to become soldiers. The East India Company adopted the same method when it began recruitment for its own army, which came to be known as the Sepoy Army. The word Sepoy comes from the Hindustani word Sipahi, meaning soldier. So, when East India Company wanted to recruit soldiers from the countryside, it adopted the same method as the Mughal successor states, that is, recruiting farmers, young boys from the countryside, and then training them to become professional soldiers in the Sepoy Army. As warfare technology changed from the 1820s, the cavalry requirements of the company's army declined. So, the methods of war, the tactics in battle, the armors, the weapons which were used, all these underwent a change in the 18th century. With this change, the company's requirement of an army with horses that declined. This is because the British Empire was fighting in Burma, in Afghanistan, and in Egypt, where soldiers were armed with muskets and matchlocks. Soldiers were armed with muskets, meaning long rifles, and matchlocks, meaning long revolvers. So, the soldiers of the company's army had to keep pace with the changing military requirements, and its infantry regiment now became more important. Infantry regiment, the foot soldiers regiment, became more important than the horseback regiment. Now, in the early 19th century, the British began to develop a uniform military culture. Soldiers were increasingly subjected to European style training, drill, and discipline that regulated their life far more than before. This often created problems since caste and community feelings were ignored in building a force of professional soldiers. When you are training soldiers, when you are training professional soldiers, you ignore the question of caste, community, background, religion, etc. Now, what did the sepoys feel before this? How did they react to the change in their lives and their identities? That is, their sense of who they were. The revolt of 1857 gives a glimpse into the world of the sepoys, how their lives changed while being trained for the company's army, while being trained to shoot at their own people when the company ordered. While training with the company's army, they were not Indians anymore. They were members of the East India Company's army. So, if the East India Company ordered them to fire at the Indian villagers, they had to obey. Thus, the East India Company was transformed from a trading company to a territorial colonial power. The arrival of new steam technology in the early 19th century further aided this process, because till then it would take anywhere between 6 to 8 months to travel from England to India. Steamships reduced the journey time to 3 weeks, from 6 to 8 months to 3 weeks, enabling more Britishers and their families to come off from England to India. By 1857, the company came to exercise direct rule over almost 63% of the Indian territories and 78% of the population of the Indian subcontinent. Combined with its indirect influence on the remaining territories and population of the country, the East India Company had virtually the whole of India under its control. So that's it, we are done with this chapter. We'll meet again in the next video. Till then, bye.